Hello, everybody. Tenacious Earl here, and I haven't done too many question and answer type videos in a long time, but hey, if there's any time to start, I guess the time is now. So, um, thank the many of you who have watched my Oakland versus Detroit, or Oakland at Detroit video for the TBL, but in the process, I received a question from a regular poster here on the channel, Manuel Christian Rivera, and I'm going to try and hopefully get the gist of your question here. I think questions like this are asked enough, but not exactly in this fashion, but I think you bring out some points, and let's just talk about it. Hey Earl, great video. How do you see if a starting pitcher should stay in the game? Is it by runs, by batters, or by innings? And so I guess I would start by saying that's kind of the that's the genesis of a lot of what you have to do in as a manager in baseball. Putting together a lineup is great. You do that, but then once it plays out, the lineup kind of like does its own thing. You make some calls here and there, and you can do some strategy. You can ask the hitter to do this, that, or the other, or base runners. But a lot of it is your strategy when it comes to the use of your bullpen and the effective use of your starter. You have extremes to either end of how you do. You want another guy who comments on the channel here quite often, Jerry Ball. He will talk about wanting to use a starter as long as possible, maybe even to the extreme that it would be a lot like what starters used to go, where you could even have starters going on back-to-back days potentially. If then other people would be maybe, I don't have any examples of this, but could be on sort of the more conservative end. And maybe managers in real baseball today are getting to that point where they're starting to think about earlier and earlier. I mean, my approach is, because I'm doing I'm trying to do a simulation, I'm trying to use my best judgment of what a manager would do. Not every case is going to be the same. There are going to be times when a guy is gushing runs, and I'm going to leave him in because, let's say their bullpen is toast. I mean, you can only use a bullpen so much. Whatever, regardless of what Gabe Kapler thinks. It's not wise to have your bullpen pitch multiple days in a row. So if that's the case, and a guy's given up 6 runs, but it's the 4th inning, and you know that you've only got maybe 2 relievers in your bullpen that you'd really like to just kind of keep it to them, and maybe they're at most 2-inning guys, or maybe like one's a 1 inning and others a 2 inning. You're going to maybe try to push this the starting pitcher a little longer. I mean, that's what I would be trying to do if I can get away with it. And if you can't get him to go longer, then maybe you have to think about sacrificing a guy out of your rotation to take a 2 or 3 inning jaunt out of the bullpen, and then you've got to call a guy up for your next game or two games down the road in order to get a spot start, things like that. Or maybe you let your long reliever rest up a little bit more, and maybe he can take a start if he's got a start rating in this game. There are going to be some games. So the next one was by batters. I would say I like to use batters as a general guide. I don't want to say absolutely, because like I said, runs. If a guy is giving up a lot of runs and the bullpen's fresh, you'd like to try to keep it close. Maybe if it's within, 3 or 4 runs, you might be able to sneak back into the game. And so you might call on your bullpen. But I feel like if a starting pitcher is getting upwards of 27 batters. So 3 times through the lineup, you're just starting to get to where, and if you play out, if you use Strat PC to record your games, it kind of gives you a pitch count. So when I'm entering in my games via Strat PC, a lot of times I'll be looking at how my pitch count in the game, its simulated pitch count, ends up faring compared to what it expects to get for that pitcher. And so, for instance, in the game yesterday, I think Mangden ended up at about 102 pitches, and that was with 26 batters faced, which is probably right about right, but maybe probably a little bit high for him. I think what they were targeting was 96. So, but I would say 27, especially if it's like a 6 or longer. If you've got a 5-inning starter, if you get up to 27, you're really pushing it probably with him, because most likely and here's some of the reality that you're going to start to realize the more you play this game. The reason that a guy is a 5-inning starter is probably because his whip and his walks per inning, hits per inning, runs per inning are going to generally be higher than the guys who can go 7 or 8 innings. I mean, it kind of follows, if you know what I'm saying, that a guy who's not as effective is going to be shorter. And so you're just not going to see, you're not going to have a lot of games where a guy that's rated for 5 innings gets into 6 without much trouble. And for Mangden and for Oakland yesterday, his trouble was walks. He had, I think it was 5 before I had to take him out of the game. I mean, that's just, you can't sustain that level of proficiency. You're going to ruin your chances of a victory if you do that. So that's the case where, so that's where I say batters, I really like to consider 27 as sort of a breaking point. Now, if a guy is pitching really well, let's say he's in the 8th inning and he's hit 27 batters, I might try to squeeze up to 30 and see if we can get him through that game, a complete game. Because for a pitcher, that's kind of a milestone, getting a complete game. Some pitchers, it's routine, especially when you go back in time. But anymore, when you get somebody who completes a game, that's kind of a remarkable circumstance. So I would say batters, for me, is a really good guide. I think innings are fine too. I think if you go much more than one past a pitcher's inning of weakness, he's probably pitching a good game for him. If he's probably got a 5 ERA, maybe he's only given up 2 runs, and in that he's done really well. Now, another thing that factors in with the league that I'm doing is the fact I'm using no DH. If you have a DH, then the pitching proficiency or pitching effectiveness is almost completely going to be your factor in why you would keep a guy in versus removing him for bullpen. The other thing would be potentially maybe a matchup, but really, what else is there? The fact that this league has the pitchers coming to bat means that you're taking a spot that could be a 250 hitter and you're replacing it with probably a guy who's hitting 100 at best, barring a few select cases. So, to get a 15% jump in effectiveness, or maybe even, if you want to talk on base percentage, you might be getting a 20 to 25% jump in effectiveness in being able to accomplish a goal, which is, if you're behind, getting runs to get back in the game, or if you're ahead, trying to add to your lead, that substitution might make sense. Or maybe it makes sense if he's being very effective, and if he, based on his statistics, his inning of weakness, that bringing him out may be, more detrimental to your team than leaving him in, then you would let him hit. So the point is, my the way that I do it is I consider it from the standpoint of what am I going to do as a manager? I'm going to manage this team. I got to look at, again, mostly in the case of my league, which is no DH. I'm going to look at the score effects. I'm going to look at how effective the pitcher's being. I'm going to look at what the bench has to offer. Because even with a decent bench, you're still getting a jump, but you might have some benches that are just not that effective, and so then you're really just talking maybe a 10% jump. Is it really worth it then? It may not be. Is there a guy on base? You might be better off sacrificing an out just by having him going up there and bunting and saving some of your pinch hitters for a little later in the game when you know for sure. If it's early in the game, do you want to hold on to those guys off your bench? Because in a National League kind of setting, you only have typically only have 4 guys you can call out to pinch hit or to relieve for injury, plus a catcher. And a lot of teams are probably going to use the catcher last in those situations, because if that guy gets hurt, then you're going to somebody in emergency fashion, and you may who knows, you're rolling the dice, no pun intended, on that. So I guess that's my guidance. Is I would say use number of batters faced, I think, as sort of a guide. If a guy is getting through his 3rd time through the lineup, well, let's say, I'll put it this way. First off, I would say effectiveness, which is runs primarily and score effects. If you can get a guy through 5 innings and it looks like he's going to get a lead or have a lead through 5, you want to at least try to get him to that, because you would earn him a victory that way if his team can, if his bullpen can pull it through. If he's being effective. From there, let's say you get to 5 innings and it's a tie game, 1 run either way, and you go into 6 and you see that guy is starting to get into the 25 to 27 batter range. I would say you'd probably want to try and cut that off pretty soon and start thinking, if he lets a guy or 2 on base, you get the bullpen going and maybe consider the switch there. And the innings, I guess that's factored in there as well. But I think batters faced is a pretty good gauge. If that guy gets through 3 times, he's probably done himself a lot of favors in terms of his statistics, and his team a lot of favors in terms of the score. But use your best judgment. Again, if you think the team is better served by keeping a guy in there because the bullpen's a little iffy, so be it. So anyway, I thought I would just try and do a quick little Q&A. You're welcome to put your comment of what you use in terms of your gauge for when to pull a starting pitcher. And, we can have a little conversation here in the comments, and I appreciate everybody taking a second to watch this. Go ahead and subscribe if you want more videos like this. Also, we have a lot of game videos from a variety of different baseball, football, basketball, horse racing, golf, etc., etc. Pretty much you name it, we have it somewhere here in the channel, except maybe hockey. There's not much of that, but that may be down the road here soon. So anyway, signing off. Thanks a lot. Hopefully that answered your question, Manny, and we will see you all soon.